Hello, and welcome to What Moves Us, the podcast where we ask what moves us, or more accurately, what's going to move us in future.
With the Rail Innovation Group's Johannah Liam and Liam Henderson, we look at debates, themes, and decisions of the minute that will impact on the way we get about in the future.
Good morning. Hello, Johannah, up there in Scotland. How are you doing?
Hi, Liam. I'm good, and it is sunny. You might be able to see in the window behind me.
Despite your hoodie.
It's like my hoodie. I just love my hoodie.
On the podcast today, we have a special guest. I'll let him fully introduce himself in a second, but it's Guy Barkley from our newest member, Atmo Technology, based in Bristol. So, Guy, do you want to give your full introduction to us?
Yeah, sure. Lovely. Morning, Liam. Morning, Johannah. I'm Guy. I'm CEO and founder of Atmo Technology. We're an asset and environmental data company based in Bristol. We've been going about 8 years. We spun out of the University of Bath, about 8 years ago, and we're now middle of Bristol. Rail is now our biggest sector. We work also in highways and ports and infrastructure. Work on some pretty big projects. Our main capabilities, we're a software company primarily, but we've also got an in-house data science team. I'm sure we'll get into all about what we do shortly.
Yes, I noticed you were founded in 2016, which is also when we were founded.
All right, well, there you go.
We're siblings. Just before we get into the floor about the company, is when you say you're spun out, what does that mean?
Thankfully, no chunk is owned by the university. I was managed to. I was an engineering student at Bath, and I got. Me and co-founder Paddy, we got scholarships. So that's how we met. We met on the Bath Engineering Scholarship Program. I'm a mechanical engineer by training. Paddy's a elec eng. Although I was building electric racing cars at the time I started that project. So we met through that project, and through our scholarships we got some money each, and we pooled that, started the company, and then we ended up getting other money from grants and investment over the last 8 years. So now we're based in Bristol.
If you're a spin out from another university, how is it you're in Bristol?
So I met my now wife in Bath, and she was getting an actual job at PwC, and I was starting up a company, so I didn't really have much of a say in the matter. So here we are in Bristol, and still happily married with 2 little ones, and it turned out Bristol's awesome. So funnily enough, it's about 10-15 minutes away on the train. I think I'd only been here maybe 3 times whilst I was at uni, because I was very much in the Bath ecosystem. But it's a great city, so very much landed on our feet.
Right. So I'm assuming that Bristol was not the reason why you're focusing on air quality and noise pollution.
Oh, well, I need to be careful what I say. Like, Bristol's got great PR for being clean, but we also work with the NHS, and so we get access to some of the public air quality data. And like most major cities, the air quality is not great. So even though Bristol's, there's lots of green stuff going on, some of the main roads in Bristol are pretty bad for air quality, and like most cities. We're obviously quite close to that with some of our inner city clients.
So the inner city clients, I guess I want to know what challenge you're solving. Is it that you're trying to identify and sort of quantify the problem, or are you trying to help them solve a problem?
We do lots of things now as a company. We started off purely air quality, and now we do noise. We do lots of asset data. We're doing energy, but just on air quality in cities. If we're working with be it the NHS and they've got hospitals in the middle of a city, or for our obviously mostly rail listeners, if we're working in a station or a depot that's in the middle of a city, we have to sort of delineate between what levers the company has in terms of reducing air quality on site versus what the background levels are, so we can make it quite clear what's in the company's control and what isn't. The NHS has a bit of a obviously a close relationship with the council in Bristol, so we can do things around the clean air zone. But yeah, for rail, it's understanding where the hotspots are for, safety risks to people. We obviously want to protect the staff that are working on site, so looking at exposure to particulates, to NO2. We've done work with DEEs in depots, for example. That's diesel engine exhaust emissions. So if you've got Class 08s or fleets of diesel trains coming into your depot, we've done work there. It's also useful to know what the background levels are, so we can sort of understand what proportion of it's coming from the site and the activities on site. And sometimes similar for noise, but we do things on sensitive boundaries, for example, for stations and depots, so we can understand if they're getting complaints, or if or sites want to be a good neighbour, we can help there, understanding what the sources of noise are. So those are sort of where we cross over into sort of urban and cities. We don't do too much with local councils. We tend to work with private industry. I think just in the early days we just found it a bit easier to work with private companies. We have worked with councils, and we've worked with universities, and we work with the NHS, but we've just found it more straightforward to work with private companies where they own the land. It's nice and straightforward.
And can I just take you back to your early days a bit more, sort of like
sure.
your University of Bath days? That you founded the company when through grants and things that you had, and your studies and that. When you were thinking about how you would set this out and what you would do, what was your vision? Because sort of like, obviously you're benefiting now from the growth of AI and data and everything but it's grown so much in those 8 years. So where was your starting point, and how did you get to where you are now and hone sort of like your value proposition and your product and everything?
So we will get to rail stuff, John. This could be an hour itself, so I need to be careful. But one of the first goals was not to start a fintech company, because that was very hot 8 years ago. So lots of people were going starting fintech companies, and I don't care about fintech. It's a bit, there's lots of AI startups now, and that's a very hot area. And the value is, I think there will be lots of value, but I think some of it is to be seen. So we'll see how that plays out. But we wanted to do something we cared about fundamentally, and air quality is a massive, massive societal challenge. There's about 13,000. So this is HSE numbers. This isn't Extinction Rebellion. This is HSE numbers. About 13,000 deaths per year from accumulated exposure to airborne pollutants. And that's just in industry. It's about 40,000 if you look at the population as a whole and take into account.
Is that 40,000 figure is from the King's Fund, isn't it?
Quite possibly. So the 13,000 is definitely HSE, and then the 40,000 is
I think that is the King's Fund figure for premature deaths because of poor quality air.
Okay, well, I'm sure well, if you've got the same number, that's reassuring. But yeah, so it's a massive societal challenge, so we wanted to get stuck into that. But yeah, the early days, I think actually, whilst I was at uni, we started out in electric bikes. So I'd set up a project at uni called Team Bath Racing Electric, which is electric cars. With about 25, 30 engineers, we had about 60 grand to play with that we raised from private sponsorship. And that my mantra for setting out the project, it was going to be the worst electric car Bath ever built, because I wanted it to be sustainable. I didn't want to just train up 25, 30 engineers. We splash 60 grand and go have a fun time at Silverstone. I wanted us to train 1,000 engineers in electric powertrains over the next 30 years. So that was the vision for that. And so there's been 9, 10 cars now. So you can go on Team Bath Racing Electric, Google that, and some cool. Not just yet. Listen to the podcast. We obviously don't want to do that from the Rail Innovation Group listeners. So that was a really fun project, really tough project, but it's still going. So we're probably up to about 200 engineers that have been trained, and a lot of those go to work in electric powertrains now, which is really sort of, I get like a warm fuzzy feeling from that, and I get invited back every year, so that's always nice. And then the grants actually took us into electric bikes. So if you go back 10 years, sort of Deliveroo and some of those services were on the up, and so I think I was in third. I was on a 5-year sandwich course, and I think in third year I set up what was our sort of first dabblings of a company, and we got a bit of money from the uni, a bit of grant funding, and we were trying to deliver food to offices in big electric cargo bikes. So that was our sort of first foray into setting up companies. I think after about 12 months, 18 months, we were like, we've built this IoT system. We're nerdy engineers. This is a B2C company essentially that we're trying to set up with electric bikes, and that's not our forte. We need marketing people, and our forte is engineering. And by that point, data. We'd set up a system to monitor the temperature in the food and the humidity inside the bikes. So we had this IoT system built, and we had a fleet of bikes, and we're like, okay, we're not generating enough investment revenue from that to get investment, so let's pivot, let's try something else. And so we took the basis of that IoT system, this is back in 2017, something like that, and we pivoted into other fleets of vehicles. And so we got our first contract with the glamorous Bristol Waste Company to do air quality, and it was it was using sensors we'd built, and we had this whole IoT system feeding data into the cloud. And it paid me and Paddy's rent, and we were like, what the hell? Like, this is, we've made more money from this contract than we did from any of the food stuff. So we were like, oh, and it's air quality as well. It's actually a good thing as well. So we haven't sold our soul to the devil. We haven't made a Faustian pact. We can actually do this. And so, yeah, it went from there. And then we started working in ports, and then we were into rail. I think earliest projects were like Bristol Tumblemead Station and DB Cargo, Toton, and Reaper Train Care, that sort of stuff, and we're sort of away.
And how has the appetite been from the rail industry for your solutions?
So good. So rail was our biggest sector. We work with Tox, we work with Fox, we work with Network Rail. We're keen to work with those. I think our main constraint is our reach as a startup, and getting our name out there. It's obviously very big established companies that have worked in rail for decades, and so I think this is obviously great for us to get our name out. Rail's now our biggest sector. We do work in highways and ports and infrastructure, but yeah, it's going on.
And have you had to calibrate your products for the rail space?
Good question. I think we did more so in the earlier days. I think now we've got more of an established software product. It's quite a versatile software product in itself. So it will do air quality, noise, GPS and asset data, all that good stuff across sector. And what we find is that, whether we're working at Hinkley Point C or whether we're working in rail, it tends to be large machines doing loud things sometimes. Sometimes people are present, sometimes there's materials being moved around and it generates dust, plume, sometimes there are neighbouring communities. So I'm not just picking out Hinkley, this is across sector. But we find that there's, a great degree of overlap. And so we're trying to solve a common problem across these sectors. We have naughtily gone a little bit deeper on some of the rail projects. So we're currently working on a smart depot project with Network Rail and SWR. So that's Holgate and Salisbury. So Holgate's one of the biggest depots in Europe, and so we're doing lots there around noise and air quality, and there's a big focus on asset data there as well. So looking at key fleets, utilization, fuel usage, water usage, all that good stuff. So we're trying to save money, generate a return on investment, whilst doing all these good things with air quality and noise.
And is that the project that you were successful in being awarded funding under the First of a Kind project?
Yes, yeah, well done homework. Yes, that's right. So that's just over £250,000 Innovate UK project, and so yeah, it's enabled us to try some cool new things, and we've already had commercial follow on from that direct project with Network Rail, which is great. So even though the project's still ongoing, so with a slightly upgraded scope, and so we think that's going to be a really big area for us over the coming years. So depots is a really good opportunity for us, and Yeah.
Just before we move on to other things about the project itself and that, can I just ask how you found applying for the first of a kind funding, how you found that, and also your ability to be able to get an industry partner, so obviously for the project, because it's a depot, I presume you're partnering with South West Rail and also Network Rail. So how collaborative and how easy was that to get them on board into to your project that you wanted to submit?
So it helps that we're not a startup on day one. We've got industry connections. So Network Rail and SWR were their formal partners, but we also had letters of support from Hitachi and DB Cargo for that project as well, which lends credibility. I think the actual process is fairly straightforward. I think the Innovate UK is about as good as it can be, because obviously it's public money, so that it should should be careful about how it's spent, and every startup should be wary of getting too dependent on grants and that sort of thing. But I think here it was a genuine opportunity for us to try something new. We're already working in rail, but it just allowed us to go a bit deeper with a real client need at the end of it, which has hopefully been validated by the fact that we've got some commercial agreements off the back of it.
I think Johannah's question was probably inspired by, we did a thought piece last year about applying for funding. So have a bit of insight from other members as to their journey. Yours was a nice journey.
Yeah, so it's been great for us, and I think the key thing is it's got to have a commercial endpoint. I think if everyone does some innovation for the sake of innovation, and we can all pat ourselves on the back and have a nice little round of applause and say, well, wasn't that great? We did some innovation, and then it doesn't go anywhere at the end of it. It wasn't a good use of public money, and it's not good for either the big company, typically big company who's supporting it, and it's not that good for the little company who's developed something tangential to fill this, to fulfill some criteria in a grant application. So I think the key thing is making sure there's a real client need, and a pathway to commercialization, a practical one, not just a spreadsheet, which I think sometimes on the applications it can be too much credence given to a spreadsheet, and it's like it can be a little bit theoretical. So I think having a practical pathway to a commercial output is the ultimate validation that it was a useful innovation.
Yeah, you're covering some of my future questions. So
great. Well, I don't know.
One of which was, what's your advice for other people? And it's clearly have a pathway. No, I was going to ask you a bit of a follow-on wider question is, how do you find being a startup /SME in the rail space? Do you find it's easy or a challenge?
Oh, it'd be easier if we had if we were on all these big frameworks and we had the name of some of these big consultants or the reach. I think for us the challenge is the reach and the time, because the main challenges in SME, we want to move quickly, or we can move quickly. Just last week we turned a project round in highways in a day. We got an email on the Monday lunchtime, and we were on site Tuesday evening. We did some expedite. So our philosophy for we still do IoT. We don't build sensors, because I know we mentioned building sensors. We used to, but now we're hardware agnostic, and our philosophy is to fill in the gaps. But so we can get hardware on site quickly, and we have that IoT expertise. But where possible, we do like to use existing data sets. There's so another challenge for us in SME is accessing these massive data sets that do exist, in large companies. So typically 60 to 90% of data collected by large companies isn't looked at. So they're paying to collect it and then not getting the insights from it. So it's called dark data. So where we can, we want to use that existing data. So it could be telematics. So we're not looking to rebuild the wheel. If you've already got telematics, we're not going to go, we can install GPS, but we'd rather access your API for telematics and then, combine that with air quality and noise data sets. That's sort of one of the unique things about us. We combine and integrate data sets. We're not looking to rebuild the wheel. So one of the challenges is getting access to those data sets. But when we do, it can just be so powerful, and we've got a really great team, some good software, where we can generate some deep insights there. So accessing the data sets and then moving quickly is a big challenge. I think if you're a massive company and you can afford to wait 12 months or 18 months for a project to start. Whereas I think for every SME, that cash flow thing is always sort of on the forefront of our mind. It has to be. And so actually, what can we do in the meantime, sort of thing. So I think that's been a big challenge. Yeah, but maybe that's a challenge for every company. Yeah, and
if you were, I would like just because because we were doing some advice maybe to some startups and SMEs with sort of having the knowing where you're going and commercialization path. But if you put on your other hat and you were sat in your client's position and wanting to sort of like give them some advice for how to deal with SMEs and maybe make that an easier pathway for SMEs, what advice would you ask for?
So if I'm in the client's shoes,
yeah, in terms of that
that'd be nice.
moving quicker and maybe having a bit more empathy with that whole cash flow thing, because I think all SMEs have that challenge, and I think in all the years that whether I've been sat in Rail Innovation Group or government to and that I think on one level you understand, as the client you understand it, but you don't really understand it because you haven't experienced it, because you're not the startup. So I was wondering, how do you create that empathy and try and help the process along? It's not about being critical, but sort of like what would really help, and what advice would you ask for?
So firstly, also with we even as a CEO of a small company, we have to look at costs and be very, very strict and have controls on what we spend. So obviously that's even great if you've got a massive budget and you're running a whole operation for a large company. Obviously cost control is really important. I would say I think the risk is that SMEs you're going to get more variance. So I think when you've got frameworks and things like that, it's great when you're on there. I think practically they do act as a moat for large companies, and from the contractor side, which is fine. That's kind of what it is. If I was a large consultant, I would also build moats. But it can be useful for the client as well in just ease of working with a company that you're familiar with. So obviously that's a practical benefit as well. But I think it can lock out a lot of opportunities. So there's some risk with some SMEs are good, some SMEs are bad. So you need to manage that. And so I guess, but I'm not sure if frameworks really protect you from that risk. If you're an SME and you're just good at navigating, getting onto frameworks, you still might be able to wangle the system. If you've got a couple of good relationships, you might get some big contracts and still not deliver some good work. So I'm not sure it really manages that risk. But practically, what can the client do? I think do need to be wary of SMEs and really test them out. So I think a win-win is testing out SMEs with some smallish projects to begin with, see if they're any good. It's good for the SME because it helps with cash flow. You get paid a bit in the meantime whilst you're having those long-term discussions. Just test them out, see if they're any good. If not, just jettison them. You haven't spent too much. But I think if you're not working with SMEs, a good SME, I would say, if the thing that they're great at, they should be able to do better value than a larger company. I think if you're only working with one or two companies, it can act as a bit of a local monopoly, and so as the client, you might not be getting the best value. We also work with large contractors, so I don't want to sort of put the we do.
No, so I was just as you were saying that, I was just thinking, so talk about not taking up the opportunities, and I think maybe that's maybe for you to come in and say a bit more about your technology and how that's sort of like how that allows larger organizations and rail organizations and just industry in general to take up your solution, because why is it more innovative? Why is it unique to other competitors, shall we say? What does it allow them to do that's better?
So what's more innovative about Atmo, or just generally?
About Atmo.
So I think we've got some. I guess our main product offerings that are doing well in rail right now. So I've mentioned noise, for on-site, risk to people, protecting staff, off-site, nuisance to neighbours, being a good neighbour, minimising complaints, all that good stuff, permitting, compliance. We've obviously done air quality since for a long time. So again, exposure to people and nuisance, dust off-site, DEEs, all that good stuff in depots. Recently we've done some really interesting works with Network Rail. So if you're a large company with lots of sites, one of the things we've done is, again, using existing data. So it's not us collecting this, but on renewable energy, we've been optimizing solar setups, and I probably shouldn't go too specific into the results of that, but it's been positive. So if you've if you're a large company with a portfolio of sites and you want to save some money and be greener, so via renewable energy, you can do that by offsetting some of your own usage. So and rather than having a solar panel out in the middle of the nowhere where you might get a certain export rate, let's say 10-15p per kilowatt hours, whatever it is, you might get double or triple that if you can offset your actual usage. So we've been doing some really interesting scalable algorithms there about right sizing solar batteries, export tariffs for different sizes of site. Obviously, there's lots of practical considerations whether a site is suitable to have renewable energies or not on it, but that's been that feels like it's got quite a lot of momentum behind it as an area. I think a lot of companies, and it's a bit of a no-brainer. You save money and you reduce CO2. So that's been a really good one, which has been very innovative. Our algorithms are very scalable. We don't have to go install anything. We can use existing data to do that. So I think that's one where we've gone quite deep and moved quite quickly as a company.
Have you been? I suppose, have you seen the results for long enough to see the pattern in the client's investment decisions based on the data you're producing?
So this project's been going for about 6 months now. So I think there will be really clear outputs from it. Yeah, and
don't worry, I understand there might be.
Yeah. I promised a couple of my colleagues that I wouldn't give away anything too sensitive from clients about decisions they made and results. It is good, basically, and yes, they will. I'm sure they'll make decisions off the back of it. And the question is now about expanding it across lots and lots of sites. And we're also exploring this in airports and other sectors as well. But I think for any rail company that's got a portfolio of sites, that's something we can help with. And that's gone really well, and we'll move quite quickly, which has been good.
Okay. And then I guess a wider question, and I appreciate we're drawing to the close, but it's...
Oh, how are we plumbing out? Right.
Been listening intensely. Do you find your comms is... Where would you say the balance is of people coming to you because they know they have to do something, or your company reaching out to other people to remind them of their obligations, and you can help them with their obligations?
Good question. I've got a marketing manager. Oh, you know Beth, don't you? That's a question for Beth. So inbound and outbound. I think we do get inbound. We're obviously pushing for more and more inbound. I think also as a small company, we just need to get our name out. So we don't spam. We don't do cold emails. We try and be very targeted with anything we do that's outbound. We get lots of introductions, which is nice. And that's one of the most helpful things actually as an SME. Is if you go do a good... Oh yeah, you're asking earlier about advice for companies getting into rail.
Yeah.
Just do a good job.
Do a good job.
Do a good job. If you've got a happy client at the end of it and they'll give you some referrals, that's yeah. But so yeah, we do get inbound, and like I say, we had just last week the one we turned around in a day. So it's one of those things where that's another advantage of working with a small company. We can move really quick. But we do very targeted outbound. So I think we I don't think we annoy many people with our I get so many. How many things do you get on LinkedIn? It's like, oh my goodness, so we don't do that. We're very targeted, and we won't reach out to people unless we're doing like directly relevant stuff with someone in an adjacent company, for example. So yeah, I think we're quite well behaved in that sense.
And if someone does want to do inbound marketing, inbound communication, where should they go?
So you can go to I'm trying to give it individual email addresses now. Atmotech.co.uk. You can reach out to us through the website. So it's Atmo, ATMO, and then tech for tech.co.uk.
The description anyway.
Hopefully.
Yes. Cool. I have noticed this whole period for the benefit of our audience that you are wearing the Atmo t-shirt on the Zoom call. Is that a requirement amongst the staff?
Got a mix in the office. But we don't have to wear Atmo merch. I actually find it just because obviously I'm CEO and like just sort of live and breathe Atmo. I find it helps me to actually get into sort of civilian clothing at the end of the day, and that's how I sort of mentally switch off. It's like just a little trigger thing, so I can actually switch off and spend quality time with family rather than still thinking about So I choose to wear it. It's not compulsory amongst staff. But I choose to wear it most days. And I think we've got some pretty good merch. Yeah. Maybe we should sell Atmo merch.
Always, or yeah.
So it's interesting because just as a little follow on from sort of like the marketing question, do you go to lots of exhibitions and events and things, or is it all just client referral? As you say, just do a good job.
No, we do. We go to. I was at the Rolling Stock Network in Derby. I was at what's the one in Stratford-on-Avon, the massive one, Rail Live. We were at Innertrans, we exhibited at Innertrans. That was expensive, but thankfully we weren't paid. Yeah, and we've exhibited at multiple rail shows.
And how helpful do you find those for getting the word out about your company?
Yeah, good. I think you always bump into lots of familiar faces as well. So I think it's about that as well. It's new and existing faces. It's both. Yeah, I'm just thinking back practically to the last couple of shows we were at, and yeah, it was both. We saw lots of familiar faces and met quite a few new ones too.
And you mentioned the expense, even if others are covering the cost. Is the expense worth it?
Yeah, I think it is. We're obviously targeted. We don't exhibit at all of them. We exhibit at some. And if we're doing Innertrans, we try to get someone else to pay for it. Because that's particularly expensive. But so it's a mix. We attend, we exhibit. But yeah, we tend to be quite targeted because we've also got to exhibit at other events in other sectors as well.
So where will people see you next?
Oh, good question. I need to check my diary. You put me on the spot there.
Put it on the LinkedIn post.
Yeah. Follow Atmo Technology on LinkedIn, and I'm sure you'll find out. I'll need to check my diary.
Right. Okay. Well, we hope to see you soon in person.
That'd be great.
And this was extremely interesting. So thank you for your time, Guy.
Great. Thank you. Good to speak to you.
Lovely. Cheers, Liam. Cheers, Johannah.
Thanks for listening to another episode of What Moves Us. We hope we moved you. For more episodes, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our channel.
Till next time.